Hi, this is Steve Delamart along with Gary Jost. I'd like to explain the first of the documents in our THEOT workflow. It's the one in which we align the texts. This is perhaps the most important document that we create in the entire workflow. It's the first one. We sometimes refer to it as the dots and bars, and we'll learn why here. In this video, we want to cover where did the sample of manuscripts come from that we use in our study, and by what criteria were these manuscripts assembled for the work. And then by what principle of organization were the text arranged into columns? And what are the consequences of the decisions that we made? Finally, then, why do we have confidence that this principle of organization is the one best suited for the kind of investigation of textual history that we're doing? That's what we'd like to cover in the video today. A criteria of selection. Where do the sample of manuscripts come from? It comes from the full range. We have a database of about 425 manuscripts other than Psalters, manuscripts that contain books of the Ethiopic Old Testament. And they are available from every library we can find in the world, especially those that offer image sets. And so we have that, and from those then we select and have used nearly 300 of these in studies of one sort and another. Gary.
So the question may arise, by what criteria were they assembled? And so one of our goals was to represent evenly the full range of extant manuscripts. We did pay particular attention to an evenness of distribution between those up to and including the 16th century and those including and after the 16th century. And as best we could, we sought a geographic distribution.
Now, this raises the whole issue of unprovenance manuscripts that sit in European and North American libraries and all over the world, and even in many libraries in Ethiopia. Geographic distribution is much more difficult to ascertain than chronological. So the kinds of conclusions that can be drawn from a good sample, the same sample will give you fairly reliable conclusions about chronology. It will not necessarily give you very reliable and detailed conclusions about geographic distribution. And there's a lot more that could be said about that, but the user needs to understand that right up front. And it's precisely for that reason. Most manuscripts outside of Ethiopia, very unfortunately, have lost their provenance information.
So then the question arises, what principle of organization was used in order to arrange the text into columns? So for all of the words existing in the sample manuscripts, we line the words up so that each column has words with the same root. This means that if two words have two distinct roots, they belong in separate columns. Consequences then of this decision, first of all, we temporarily suppress, but we don't destroy, all linguistic data related to the prefixes, infixes, and suffixes that nuance words. This enables us ultimately to get the clearest picture of which word in one manuscript should be compared to which words in other manuscripts. This makes it possible for us to exploit the speed and accuracy of computer tools and processes. So the previous point, the idea is, how does a computer know which word in one manuscript it should compare to words in other manuscripts? And it is by virtue of aligning the words into columns that we accomplish this.
Anyone familiar with the history of scholarship in Ethiopian biblical textual criticism and textual history knows that the Old Testament has received far, far less attention than has the New Testament. There is a huge, it's an unknown territory. For us to do this, we have to exploit computational tools and abilities. And part of the discussion here is, why do you have confidence in doing this? We'll get to that a little bit more a little later, but we'll raise the question now. So why do we have confidence that this principle of organization is the one best suited for our investigation of textual history? The objection would be, Guys, in doing this and removing Semitic languages, prefixes, infixes, suffixes, are all the things that do the tiny nuancing, and sometimes the implication, the semantic implications of tiny nuancing of morphology is not small. It has huge implications. So in doing this, haven't you obliterated a massive quantity of data related to textual variation, especially in the fine tuning of relationships between otherwise closely related manuscripts? Excellent objection, raises an excellent concern. Our answer is that though this is true to a degree, we know from extensive experience now that this data does not contribute any substantial quantities of accuracy to the final visualization of the hierarchical clustering of the manuscripts, understanding how they ultimately relate to one another in terms of shared variations. Our project has always described itself as a high altitude mapping project in which we hope to identify the large contours of the tradition. And ultimately, these judgment calls are rooted in our understanding of the laws and logic of statistical analysis, particularly as they relate to degrees of confidence that the sample, an adequate sample, a well-designed sample, can represent the population with a relatively a high degree of confidence. That's what this boils down to. Lots more to talk about there, but that's the nubbins of it.
So then for what results are we working? First of all, create a way to fundamentally distinguish between shared readings and shared variations, and then also with an ability to convert this information from a linguistic form into a statistical form, which in part so that it can be processed by a computer.
And boy, there is so much to be said about this. This is the age of digital humanities. And I come back again to this point about the job before us. We have on this website some 25 to 30 data sets for to this point, most of them are relatively unstudied books, so that nothing precise is known, or very little is precisely known about the textual history of the vast majority of books of the Ethiopic Old Testament. We're filling in a whole lot of the data for 25 to 28 data sets, something like that. And this could only be done in the 12 years that we've been doing this work. Seems like an age, but it's been that long. With the use by converting this information into the linguistic form into a statistical form, and then exploiting the power and speed and accuracy of computational methods. So, and our position is that unless we learn how to take this final step, we will remain forever limited to the speed and breadth of comprehension that are available to the traditional methods of philological analysis, which are amazing, just amazing, and require people with the sorts of capacities for close, sustained concentration and aggregating. And it's just a very remarkable thing to watch, and a good execution of it. But people very rarely produce more than one or two or three of these critical editions in their lifetime. And sometimes they never do, even though they try. So the study of the origin always seems to win out. The study of emergence always seems to receive the lesser attention. That's a great claim, or a big claim on or sorry, and I in particular, Steve Delamarter, take responsibility for that observation. It could be talked about. Nevertheless, we want very, very clearly to say there is no fundamental antagonism or dichotomy between these two areas of investigation. In theory, these are, and indeed must be, fundamentally compatible in the largest scales of investigation, and that's the scale towards which we have headed to look for the big story of the textual history of the Ethiopic Old Testament. The good news for the people interested in the study of origins is that, in fact, you're going to find that this project has identified and delivered up virtually all the information necessary that exists in extant manuscripts anyway, for creating critical editions. It's there. You very quickly just go pick it up. It's in the website, ready for you to start to do stuff with. We're very excited about that possibility. So, Carrie, tell us what's exactly now in these files.
Okay, all right. What you have here is a Word doc in which we have entered the texts of all the different manuscripts. So on the right there, you see short description of the different manuscripts. And so they're arranged here. And as we talked about, they're lined up. The words are lined up according to the Gezrut. On the left is a witness identifier. Okay, so this is within this Old Testament book, a unique identifier for the manuscripts, which, as I said on the right, have a short description.
And these witness numbers may change from book to book. They will change from book to book. Yes.
Thanks, Steve. Next column then is the location within the text, in this case, Judges 1:16a. The bars are in there, that delimits the text as the computer processes it. And then the center part of this are the aligned texts. Okay, again, for each manuscript, you line up the word that has the same Gezrut, and we put a period in when there's a word missing.
Very good. Very good. So thus the following should be clear. Decisions have been made about a host of things, about samples, about criteria, about chronology, geography, principles of organization, trade-offs and approaches that could be taken, linguistic data to be temporarily suppressed, though never lost, the potentialities that may be offered by exploiting computational tools and processes. All of these are debatable, but in the end, decisions had to be made and need to be granted on a provisional basis. So we're kind of asking from you, the user. Please develop your own opinions, and you don't have to agree with any of the decisions we made, but grant us the logic that we have pursued in the doing of our thing, evaluate us on that basis, and then let's talk further about other possibilities. This is just a very exciting field and wide open to all kinds of interesting developments. All this now then is leading toward the next video and the next document that exists on the webpage you're looking at, the one that has to do with identifying variants. Good luck to you in your study of textual history.
Thank you.